Hi, I'm Jimmy. In this video, I'm going to walk through my top 6 dividend stocks from the energy sector. This video is part of our passive income from dividend series, where our goal is to find good dividend stocks from each of the 11 sectors that can give us the passive income we need to get us closer to each of our personal goal of achieving financial independence. There's a link in the description below to all the videos we've created so far in this series. Okay, so to make this top dividend list, we created a few basic rules. First, they must have a current dividend yield above 2%. That was really easy in this particular sector. Then they need a decent dividend coverage ratio, and ideally, they should be able to grow their dividends. Now, there's lots of great dividend stocks from the energy sector, so if you know any good ones that I didn't mention here, please put them in the description below. I'd be curious to see what everybody says. Okay, so let's jump right in with our first US dividend stock. First up, we have Enterprise Product Partners, ticker symbol EPD. EPD has a dividend yield of about 6.1%. And when we look at the dividends per shares, well, we can see that they've been consistently growing, which is exactly what we want from any of our dividend stocks. And analysts are expecting for that growth to continue. Analyst estimates are the green bars. And when we add earnings per share to this chart, well, we can see that earnings per share covered the dividends in 2018, but not so much in the years leading up to that. Now, this is an important point, and really it's a theme amongst a lot of energy dividend stocks. And that's because a lot of energy dividend stocks get their profits from the price of oil and natural gas. So the tricky part of investing in oil and gas companies is that we tend to be victims of the price of the underlying commodity. And in 2018, well, that was broadly a decent year for the commodities, and therefore for a lot of these companies where that wasn't really true in a year like 2017 or even 2016. Okay, so that's something to keep in the back of our mind. Next up, we have the Royal Dutch Shell Company. They come in from the London Exchange, ticker symbol RDSA. Right now, Shell has a dividend yield of about 6.4%. And when we look at their dividends alongside their earnings per share, well, we see a very similar story. A strong 2018, but a bit weaker in the years leading up to it. And meanwhile, they've been able to produce very solid dividends over the past few years. Okay, next up we have ExxonMobil, ticker symbol XOM. ExxonMobil has a dividend yield of almost 5% right now. And when we look at their dividend and earnings per share, well, we can see, once again, a very similar story. That's going to happen in almost every one of these companies. Now, the same is true for a close competitor of Exxon, and that's Chevron, ticker symbol CVX. Chevron has a dividend yield of about 4%, and their earnings and dividend history looks very similar to the rest of the companies in the industry. Now, Chevron is actually one of my favorite oil and gas companies mostly because of their efficiency. They're a very efficient organization. They tend to do well even when the rest of the industry struggles a bit. Exxon is very similar in that manner. So another thing that I think is a smart thing to do with these types of companies is to combine a few of them into one position. So in theory, if we have 10 companies in our portfolio, if we take one of those positions and we combine a few of these, that would help diversify us around a bit, but also give us a decent amount of yield. Now, if we wanted more yield, well, we could go back to London to BP. They're on the London Exchange, ticker symbol BP, and they have a dividend yield of about 6.5%. And when we look at both earnings per share and dividend history, well, we can see, once again, it's a very similar story. So as we can see, a lot of these companies act very similar to each other. Now, one company that does look slightly better than the rest of them is Total from the Paris Exchange, ticker symbol FP. And we could buy it in the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol TOT. Total has a dividend yield of more than 5%. And when we look at their earnings per share versus their dividends, well, we can see that profits have consistently covered dividends over the past few years, despite the fact that Total saw an earnings decrease during the same years that the rest of the companies did. This likely says more about the fact that Total has a more reasonable dividend payout ratio. Okay, now there's something I think we should keep in the back of our mind when it comes to looking at oil and gas companies, depending on what we're after as far as dividend yield goes. So we can break the oil and gas sector into 3 primary groups. Upstream, that's where they drill for oil and gas. Then there's midstream, that's where they transport it and store it. And then there's downstream, that's where they refine it and ultimately sell it at things like gas stations. Now, oftentimes, midstream companies can have a greater dividend yield. They get some tax advantages, things along those lines. And they can be slightly less concerned with the price of oil and gas, since they're looked at more as the toll booth collectors of the oil and gas industry. They charge a fee to ship the oil, to transport the oil, to store the oil. They don't really care how much the exploration and production companies, how much they paid for it, how much it cost them to drill it. They're going to ship it for a fee. So either way, they're going to get that fee. And this leads us to our bonus company, Energy Transfer, ticker symbol ET. They have a dividend yield of more than 9%. And although profits still move around based on the volumes that they're receiving, they have a seriously good dividend yield, and they could be worth a closer look. Now, if you're interested in a few more midstream ideas like this one, well, I did a video on some master limited partnerships that could be worth looking at. There's a link right here, and there's a link in the description below. Besides that, thank you so much for sticking with me all the way into the video. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.